Now, another thing that I was not surprised that you guys reported a big pop in was users, was active users, was page views, because I'd say anecdotally, living in Silicon Valley, the big pop I saw of everyone getting on LinkedIn was like 10 years ago, and then maybe 5 years ago. So there was sort of another one. But day in and day out, I don't get that many LinkedIn invitations. I don't get that many notices because probably most of the people I would know in the tech industry are already on LinkedIn, and that's most of my circle. But really, right after you guys went public, that absolutely changed, and I was getting way more invitations, way more people signing up, way more engagement. My in-laws are staying with me right now. They're retired and they live in Phoenix. They have suddenly got a flood of people adding them on LinkedIn, and they're like, "We're all retired. Why do we need to be on LinkedIn?" Yeah. I mean, people have sort of dismissed since the late '90s the idea of the IPO as this great marketing event. I mean, is that what caused it, first of all? And second of all, did it catch you by surprise?
It's a great question. So is that what caused it? I wouldn't say that alone caused the increase in activity that you're seeing. We were seeing good traction in Q1. We had hit a number of all-time records in terms of cumulative membership on a global basis, unique users, page views. And a lot of that traction was due to new product introductions like LinkedIn Today, which is a social news site essentially leveraging your professional contacts and information. The opening of LinkedIn Groups has really accelerated our groups engagement. So you see new products, optimization of existing products, and then that was compounded with the IPO event. And when you're thinking about going public, you're thinking about the pros, you're thinking about the cons. And certainly one of the things that people would suggest is you could get some branding value from it. I wouldn't suggest that a company go public for that reason, but it's a nice ancillary benefit if it accrues. We didn't necessarily weight that very heavily because, to your point, while in the mid-'90s and the late '90s we kind of saw that repeatedly, over the last 5 to 7 years, that's really not the case.
LinkedIn's also a 10-year-old company.
Right.
I mean, that was sort of something.
8 years.
I'm sorry, I'm prematurely aging you.
Don't age us, please.
But I mean, that was something we saw like in the bubble when there was a land grab of I've got to be first to market, and I've only been around for 18 months and I need this marketing event. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that LinkedIn even necessarily needed it.
Well, clearly there was a lot of pent-up demand in public markets for this next wave of social platforms, and we've heard that time and time again. We weren't necessarily anticipating the amount of attention or energy that would be directed towards our offering. So you asked, did it catch us by surprise? Certainly the amount of attention and the response and how positive the response was a very pleasant surprise. And I think all of that focus on LinkedIn certainly helped raise the company's profile even further. I don't know that we needed it per se because we were already experiencing good traction, but it certainly didn't hurt. And it's compounded the growth that we were already seeing. And so I think in part, that's one of the reasons you saw some of the accelerating growth rates.
Now, speaking of the week that you guys went public, I mean, LinkedIn, and I don't mean this is yet another insult, as I've already called you older than you are, but LinkedIn is usually the boring big social network.
Hey,
I mean,
we resemble that remark.
You guys don't really have scandals. There's not pedophiles lurking on LinkedIn. That I know of. There's not, all these privacy uproars. You don't have these ridiculously gaudy user numbers. I mean, it's always been sort of the slow, steady, up and to the right social network. So, it's not usually the exciting company. But, during the IPO period, there was just so much sensationalism in the press surrounding LinkedIn. What was that period like for you? And again, what was surprising about it? Because you had to expect some of it being the first big social network to come out.
Yeah, to be honest, we really weren't expecting that kind of focus or attention. And you have to give tremendous credit to our team. Something we spent a lot of time talking about before we went public was the fact that we didn't want anything to change. And some people might say that's a little naive or overly idealistic because once you're public, certain things are going to change. But first and foremost, we wanted to stay focused on the long-term goals of the company, the mission statement, the vision statement we were talking about earlier. We wanted to stay true to the culture that we've been developing here and the values that we use day in and day out to make decisions. And so we did spend time on that, and truly nothing really changed afterwards. It was business as usual, save for...
No one watching this believes you. How are people not calculating their net worth? They're watching the ticker signal. They're getting whipped up in it.
I would encourage you to actually talk to the employees themselves, and you'll see it and you'll hear it firsthand. Their focus, we spent a lot of time, Coach K, Duke Blue Devils. Whether you're a fan of the Blue Devils or not, Coach K has this wonderful expression that he uses time and time again, up and down the court. No matter how successful the Blue Devils have been on the offensive end, the defensive end, or how poorly they executed, he shouts the same thing every time: next play. Because he doesn't want people spending too much time celebrating or lamenting what just took place. You got to move on to the next play. And so we talked about that internally quite a bit, that the IPO was wonderful milestone or stepping stone towards ultimately realizing our long-term vision, but it wasn't the end game in any way, shape, or form. And so for us, it was on to the next play. And if you ask me what changed, I'd say very candidly two things. One, I think there had always been a great sense of urgency here, but it got taken up to the next level. And I think that was in part due to the sense of pride people felt in their work. And it turned out to be really wonderful the way I think the company handled the transition, and it remains that way today.